So the overview here is, bottom line, we dodged a mini bullet. And I say mini because the center of Nicholas earlier this morning was just about 30 miles east-southeast of the mouth of the Rio Grande. Nice little tightly wrapped center with 60-mile-an-hour winds inside it, but only about 15 miles wide, so it never reached the coast. And then within the next few hours, it became kind of disorganized with multiple centers trying to form up. So right now, we think that the current location is somewhere east of Port Mansfield, moving to the north-northeast at around 10 to 12 miles per hour, getting out of the way. What we have seen so far is welcome rain being the primary, quote, impact, unquote, for the Rio Grande Valley. It's been a good thing. We were getting dry there for a while, and we still need some rain to make up the September deficit. But what fell yesterday and last night through this morning was a good thing. Now, we may still see isolated to scattered showers developing on the backside with morning and early afternoon heating. Yes, we'll see some sun through those high clouds as we get later in the day. There's still enough moisture in the air to produce a quick-moving shower or storm, but at most we think 1 inch of rain would fall in any one of those stronger cells, with the rest of them being about a quarter to a half an inch. That would mean that the most we would see is ponding of water on roadways. We're not going to see any flood conditions at this point. There's just not enough deep layer moisture or systematic issues with Nicholas to come back on as it's moving away. Overnight, tides ran up to near the dunes at the wider beaches during the pre-dawn hours after high tide, and perhaps into the dunes at the narrower beaches. But as we're seeing now, low tide cycle is arriving, and there's a pretty good range of tides between high and low. So the water will begin to recede even further in the afternoon. We don't expect any future water to reach anywhere close to the dunes as we go overnight. That said, surf and rip currents remain very dangerous through the day as the swells continue from Nicholas. We've had wave heights up to 8 to 10 feet. And we've also had the swell period over 10 seconds. That means a lot of big surf out there and dangerous rips. Those will take a bit longer to recede, but we expect that to get going in earnest overnight. And tomorrow could be a fairly decent day on the beach. So how much rain has fallen so far? We mentioned welcome. Well, here's welcome. Anywhere from ½ an inch to 2 inches or a little bit more. Ravenville was jackpot. We also had some good rains near Sarita. And even near Heavenville, they got some rain. But notice McAllen, 1 to 1.2 inches of rain here from some outer bands that came through yesterday and overnight. Across the Rio Grande Plains, they didn't get anything, and that was fairly expected. Heaviest rains, you can see this little area of pink. Radar estimated 6 to 8 inches of rain. That's about 30 miles east-southeast of the mouth of the Rio Grande. That was that little mini center we talked about. Now, you can think about Hermine in 2010 and imagine if that mini center had been just 30, 40 miles west, it could have come right up through Brownsville and Harlingen and dropped 6 to 8 inches of rainfall, just like Hermine did. But as we said yesterday, we thought this would stay offshore, and it did, and that's exactly where the heaviest rains were. So that all worked out pretty well regarding our forecast. So current satellite view, you can see on visible, nice swirl here, but on the infrared, sort of disorganized a bit. There's still shear affecting the west side. The centers are in here, but the biggest convection or thunderstorm bands are out at 95 degrees west longitude, which is due south of Galveston. So that has continued all night. And you can see the lesser cloud cover, although it's still high cloud, out over the Rio Grande Valley in deep South Texas. So we think the centers, or whatever they may be, will be north of Baffin Bay and at least 35 miles offshore by sunset. The movement through the rest of the afternoon will continue to be from the north to northeast at 9 to 12 miles per hour. And as we mentioned before, some partial sunshine returning to many areas east of I-69C, meaning the mid-valley up through Valvorias by afternoon. And then what happens the rest of the week? Well, we expect typical September weather to follow, hot and humid with isolated to scattered late morning through early afternoon or afternoon thunderstorms, most days coming forward. And some of those could be pretty heavy, and maybe even heavier than what we just saw. So stay tuned for that, but that's very typical to see in the mid part of September. So here's our current threats related to Nicholas. Notice we have dropped the color bars here into the gray for most every parameter, except for the marine. We still think they'll have decent winds that'll gust to tropical storm force at times, especially east of Port Mansfield into the afternoon. And then we'll still see those high seas, rough surf, and swell continuing into late afternoon, perhaps into the evening before a gradual reduction. But everything else here, even near the coast, is just barely scraping the elevated threat. So really not much to hang our hats on any longer with Nicholas. So the key takeaways, the residual impacts from Nicholas are winding down fast. Remaining threats are primarily to mariners, boaters, and fishers out in the lower Middle Texas Gulf waters. Obviously, the shippers that come in are probably out there and dealing with this a bit, but we hope the rest of the boaters are in safe harbor. The primary impact was beneficial rain, as we thought it could be, but this rain fell at the peak of the daily rainfall totals for the calendar year. Yes, today, yesterday, tomorrow are the highest daily rain averages for the whole year. So it's really not a surprise when we use that reference of beneficial rains. We kind of expect it this time of year. As mentioned before, an additional rainfall of a quarter to a half an inch could occur in scattered showers. Might see an inch in a stronger cell or two with early afternoon heating. Exactly where that is, we just can't say, because it could include the mid-valley. It could include the brush country because it's unstable out there too. More of a typical thing you'd expect this time of year from those afternoon thunderstorms if they form. Surf and rip currents remain high this afternoon, but will gradually recede towards sundown. Will continue to recede overnight. Maybe some lurking rip currents out there tomorrow morning, but things should continue to get better during the daytime on Tuesday. You can see our forecast confident is high to very confident at this point, given the fact that Nicholas is not expected to become much stronger than it is as it moves away from our waters this afternoon.